All right. So it's a public call, so it's free. If you can stay off names and places, I would appreciate that. And
Sure.
I'm all ears.
Okay, great. Well, hey, I gotta say, it is a real treat to be talking to you. I never really expected this, and you don't know me, but I had started listening to your podcast back in 2013 because I had a son who was born that May, and so a friend of mine had recommended I listen to your show. He was an anarchist and kind of exploring anarchy at the time. And at that time, I was a Ron Paul guy and kind of, I wasn't really an anarchist, but I was, just against like just the war, violence, the absurdity of, a giant organization that has hurts individuals. I felt like it pretty against my just basic American values. So, I was kind of onto the Ron Paul um, thing with just keeping the interest rate, adjusting the interest rate up and down as this blunt instrument to control the world. And then, the extra money always ends up in the hands of just a mass murdering machine. and and so and then but my friend said, now this guy, you'll really like, is a Canadian, a podcaster out of Canada, and he's an anarchist, and his idea is that you don't even need to go through the central bank or anything like that. He says it starts in your childhood, and that if these all these people with the extra money from the central bank weren't so mad at their parents because of the way that everyone's treated by the time they're children, that, it would be different. So I was like, "Okay, that's interesting. Sure, I'll give it a listen." And I started to listen to it, and at that time, Stefan, I wasn't planning on spanking my son or being like a crazy disciplinarian or anything, but it really did drive the point home to me, how important creating a peaceful starting from the time they're babies, that they're intelligent and that they come out tabula rasa and intelligent and fully human. And to be peaceful with them from the beginning is how we really start off a real revolution to end all those things that libertarians and anarchists don't like. So because of that, Steph and I, what you radicalized me from uh, not wanting to spank my kid or yell at him or be mean to him, be ugly with them, let my frustrations with something else at work or with myself, land on him to to not even taking his iPad away to to compel him to do something I want, instead of having not being so lazy not to have a 2-minute conversation with him to help him to understand, and always finding that he would always understand and be happy to, be a team player. So I thank you for that,
Hey,
and
it's
I'm sure he
wonderful
would
to hear.
too
I
if he
appreciate.
knew how much you had helped.
I really do appreciate that. That's very kind, and thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, hello, of course. Um, the issue. So I'll just go ahead and read off then the issue that I had raised as reason for the phone call. What we could talk about, but though I'm happy to talk about anything with you, current events or just however the conversation goes. But been a long time listener, 100% peaceful parent from listening to the show. Um, uh, I was divorced in 2019. My wife and I sort of wanted different things, I guess. Maybe weren't as compatible as we had thought when we fell in love. And something sort of weird started happening after President Trump got elected in 2016, because my ex-wife and all her friends, um, and all these people that she views on social media are all getting the Trump derangement syndrome, saying, all the crazy things TDS guys say about Trump. And I wasn't even a very pro-Trump guy at the time. By now, I'm far more pro-Trump than I was at that time. I wasn't even pro-Trump back then. I was thinking, this is probably going to go the same as all these guys that get people excited that things are going to change, and then they go in and they never change. And this guy is just maybe talking a big game, but they always start with scapegoating somebody. It's always something, global warming, whatever. For him, it's immigrants. There's always something. And I never really believed the scapegoat, and I never really believed the promises. But as it turns out, this guy was kind of different than anybody America's ever had for a president in my lifetime. And, maybe like the past 100 years. I don't know. Uh, but at the time, simply just by saying, guys, I don't think he's really all that. I think you guys are kind of crazy, crazier than he is. Sound crazier than he is. It drove a wedge between me and my own wife, which it just, I couldn't believe how weird that was. And because I wasn't taking it that seriously, but apparently she and other friends were. And then they started treating me in our friend group, in our social circle, like I was Trump. I was the Trump of their group, and then started doing the TDS toward me. Had I known back then, what a real force of nature, some kind of great psychological force rolling through people's minds all of this was, and appreciated what a fire it is and how dangerous you could get burnt on it, I would probably just kept my stupid mouth shut and just kept my wife happy and just wrote it out till, probably by 2029, everyone will forget all about it. But instead, I just had to, you know, go on social media and at parties and while talking to my wife, hanging out with our friends and say, I don't think he's really all that bad. I think he's actually kind of normal. And they hated that. They hated me for saying it. And they started acting like everything I did. They started calling me racist and stuff, which is real crazy, Stefan, because they are like white, very, very white, like Dutch and stuff, like Northern European white, English and stuff. And I'm that too, 50%, but the other half is Korean. So, I'm like, man, if I'm racist, if I'm like an anti, if I'm against non-whites, I'd have to be against half of my own self. And, my mother was an immigrant. My father married her. My father was an Air Force guy, married my mother after meeting her overseas and they fell in love because they liked some of the same books. And so, they're both, I guess, real smart guys and big readers and stuff. So they fell in love. And, so that's how I was made, and,
Well, and it's funny, of course, and I'm sorry about all of
oh,
this.
go
It's
ahead.
really, yeah,
No,
I'm
thank
really
you.
sorry about all of this. Of course, it's very sad.
It
And
is.
this racism thing is, I don't know. I mean, look, I don't care about immigrants. I don't care about this. What I do care about is people who want less free speech and more government. Now, unfortunately, in general, that tends to correspond with immigrants and especially non-white immigrants. They want less free speech and they want more government. And so this is like the left. Is this famous statement? Was it Millennial Woes on X said, 90% of political discourse is the left pretending not to understand basic things, so that conversation becomes impossible.
Yeah.
So if there's any group in general that opposes free speech and wants bigger government, well, that goes against what I want. That goes against what you want. So I don't judge in terms of immigrants. I don't judge. I just judge in terms of from a voting bloc. Do you want more free speech and smaller government? That's all. That's all that I don't really care about, skin color. I don't care about national origin. I care about voting blocs. And unfortunately, there are voting blocs that correspond with immigration that want less free speech and bigger government. And that's just a shame. I mean, that just means that we're on opposite sides of the political fence. And if they get what they want, I lose my freedoms. And if I get what I want, they lose their restrictions on free speech and their desire for bigger government. So it's not complicated. It's just that's sort of the divide. And I don't know. You have to work really hard to just avoid that basic reality, but they managed to do it.
Well, I'm sort of worried that the Republicans, and that those that generally trend towards wanting more free speech, smaller government, constitutional government, individual liberty, property rights, common law, English common law, that side might be kind of fumbling these immigrants, because it seems like a lot of them might be more inclined. They seem like traditional kind of people. A lot of most of them are Catholics, right? And they seem more traditional. They seem more pro-life. They seem more, just kind of normal to me. That letting boys and girls be boys and girls. They don't have all the weird, whatever it is, kind of the white mental illness or whatever it is, a university academia mental illness of being scared of sex and having no sense of humor about boys and girls and trying to whitewash it all into just we're all robots and and there is no sex and you're not allowed to ever acknowledge it and you can't even, smile at a girl in a restaurant without her, just snapping her fingers and the police hauling you off to jail. It seems to me like a lot of those guys are kind of could almost be more allies of the Trump side than than on the Kamala Harris side of the equation, and that for some reason the Dems are going for him, and the Republicans are kind of. I don't think the Republicans are actually again. I think they're like you. I don't think they're racist at all. By now, I don't think they care about anything like that. Skin color or ethnicity or anything like that. I think it's that that we have a nation. There's a custom and borders a role for the a federal government to play to kind of know how many people are here and who is here and to there's we have laws like you just don't just break the laws and so I think the problem is from the Trump side is the illegal immigrants not that not immigrants and not anybody's race.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but of course, a lot of people come to America for free stuff. I mean, welfare usage among immigrants and illegal immigrants is very high, and it does tend to be ethnicity
Yeah.
correlated to some degree. And so, I mean, if if everybody was an individual, right, and there was no voting blocks that wanted less free speech and more government, then there would be no such thing as racism from a political standpoint. But if there are voting blocks that correlate with ethnicity that significantly vote for less free speech and more big government, then that's a problem. I mean, again, I mean, and of course, we all know that if they didn't vote for less free speech and more big government, then the wall would be, as high as the sky, so to speak. So, anyway, yeah. So, I mean, I'm really sorry about these conflicts and so on within your personal life. So, how long were you married before you got divorced?
That was really painful. Yeah, it was definitely the
Oh, sorry, you got
saddest.
kind of quiet there.
Oh, can you hear me?
It's kind of faint. Is there something on my
Hello?
end? Uh, Sorry, go
Can you
ahead.
hear me now?
Yeah, you got it. Okay, so, sorry, yeah, how long were you married before you split up?
I was married for 7 years. Is sometime for some reason it's always around 7 years if these things make or break, that they do, and so it was no different for me.
I'm sorry, but how
Um,
long were you together before you got married?
well, we got together and just fell in love really fast. Just a few months, we fell in love pretty fast. But we were in our mid-20s and starting to be almost late 20s. So we kind of, I guess, thought we knew what we wanted, and uh, uh, we fell in love pretty soon after meeting. We had both been avid readers of Ayn Rand in high school and college, and
Really?
so we yeah, so we
I'm not
both bonded
surprised from
over
your
that.
standpoint. I'm surprised from and you said she was sort of Northern European white, is that right?
Well, that's so it was someone in her friend group who is an anarchist who recommended I listen to your show. So it was, yeah, I was pretty surprised that the TDS was strong enough to just blast through all years of reading Ayn Rand, explorations of anarchy and limiting government that radically as far as just, go all the way to tell we have such a peaceful society and rational society that people that criminals are such a minority that y- that people just responsible for themselves without a big just a giant standing army over all of humanity that is just always like every 20 years or something 30 years ends up fighting a giant war and killing more of us than any criminal does. So that we were all on the same page about all of that, capitalism
So
and free markets.
what happened to her?
I don't know, man. I think her
No,
friends,
no,
I
come
think
on.
BDS.
You gotta have some idea. I mean, you're married to the lady, right? You gotta have. She's the mother of your son. You just have one kid. Is that right?
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, we had that son together in 2013. So he'll be 13 this year.
Wow. Okay. So,
Time sure
you
flies.
had to, and did you just decide to have one child, or how did that go?
You know, Stefan, I think you may be onto something with that question. As I get on in years, and the more I've explored, just planet Earth and science and social science and everything, and sort of like as a scholar, the more I'm convinced that biologic is just everything. It's just destiny for humans. So I think you're really onto something with that question. We had just the one son in 2013, and then no more kids after that until by 2019 when we were divorced. And I think maybe it was that,
No, but sorry, but
just
why
that.
did you have only one kid?
Well, we're kind of fight for we're worried about finances, never really making enough money to get ahead, but just always staying month to month. Always getting help from parents, never really having enough money to actually save up anything. And so that was a one contributor toward it. I think being a
Sorry,
little bit
sorry
afraid.
to interrupt. Was that more on your side or her side or both?
Which part on my side or her side?
Feeling like you didn't have enough money.
Probably both of us. I'd say both of us. And so, um, oh gosh, all kinds of feelings are just bubbling up. I'm trying to.
So you discussed it, right? So you talked. I mean, you planned to have the first child, and did you plan to have more? And the finances were too tough, or what happened?
Yeah. Well, I think we were. Let me see. Let me try and remember so I can answer your question correctly. It's been a while. Um, these have been some busy years for me too. Since then, let me think. Did we discuss having more? Um, we didn't really discuss having more or not. We didn't really discuss whether to have more
What do you
kids or
mean you
not.
didn't discuss?
I know, isn't
I
that
mean,
crazy?
why would you, if you could not, why would you want an only child? Because then when you and your wife are gone, your kid has no one in terms
Yeah,
of immediate family, right?
right. Just as grandparents. Yeah, she and I had to.
Well,
Yeah,
no, if
she and
you're
I had
gone, the grandparents are gone.
right. She and I were just trying to solve the rest of the world's problems, I guess, in the border policy instead of worrying about ourselves, and probably part of what we were doing wrong.
Did your son
And
want? Did he ever express a desire for siblings?
um, yeah, he said. I think I remember once saying, I asked him, would you like to have a baby brother, baby sister? And he said, yeah.
Okay, so good. So you must have talked about it with your wife.
Big mistake on our part not to. No, it was just not really anything that became like a regular topic of conversation, or something that that was conscious for us. But I think perhaps this is what I've thought since, sometimes on reviewing it, is that perhaps subconsciously, we could feel it. That humans are animals, and we could just maybe feel it. That we're losing evolution. You only have one kid, you lose. If everyone only has one kid, it's over. If you have two, you lose. That's not even replacement rate.
So I
And
just don't understand. I mean, your kid's saying, "I want a brother or a sister," and you've had a kid, and do you just like she goes on birth control, and you just don't have any more kids without even talking about it?
yeah, we did what we could to, we went out of our way to avoid having another kid,
Oh, so it
and
kind of
getting her pregnant again.
was
Yeah,
sorry,
we
it kind of was a discussion then, in that
sort of,
you
yeah, not
decided not
really.
to.
Yeah, I suppose so. Not a not really a conversation that we had in words. Um, I'm a lot
Sorry, what do you
wiser
mean
now,
in
having
words?
made these
Did you
mistakes.
mime it? Did you draw it? Did you like what does that mean? Did you have haiku? Like what do you mean not in words?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now. Um,
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you have siblings? Does your wife have siblings?
Yes. Yeah, she has a couple siblings, and I have she had two younger brothers. She's the oldest. I had two younger siblings as well, a brother and sister. I was the oldest.
And how do you guys get along with your siblings? Or how did you, I guess, 13 years ago?
Well, my entire family's out of the picture. I haven't had contact with my family for a long time because my foo, my family of origin was pretty screwed up,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry
so
about
I
that.
yeah I am
What was the
too.
story there?
A lot of it was okay, I guess. My parents were pretty good people. They always had food on the table. Uh, They always made sure we drank a glass of milk with every meal. Um, they uh, they always got us lots of nice stuff, bought us cool toys and enough clothes. Always made sure we got to school, not looking too goofy or stupid or poor or anything. We didn't buy all name brand stuff off the shelf or anything, but they, dressed us up reasonably fine to go to school, made sure we went to church, and took care of us, took good care of us in that way. But they had an anger problem. They always made enough money. They met their responsibilities and everything, and on most levels. But yeah, they just had pretty bad. They both had a pretty bad anger problem.
Okay, and
And
I'm sorry to be the nag, and I'm sure you've heard this a million
sure,
times before,
sure.
but if you could avoid chuckling and laughing about significant anger problems that cause you to not see your family, I mean, that's pretty violent and tragic, I assume.
Yeah, I find laughing about it helps me to
Yeah, but
just
it doesn't help other people. I mean, it's not all about you, bro. I mean, it doesn't help other people because other people are like, ha ha, yeah, yeah, they beat me, ha ha. Like it's disconcerting to people, right?
sure. Well, well, yeah, it's tough what to do about. They put you in a tough position when they beat you or whatever. To how are you supposed? There's not really any right way to react to something like that because it's so far beyond the pale and so inappropriate
Well, okay,
to
let
be
me ask, let
aggressive
me,
towards your
sorry,
friends.
sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Let me ask you this then. If you hired a babysitter and your babysitter beat your son, would you laugh about it?
If I was telling you about it later, I would kind of chuckle because because it's just so wrong that it's like funny. It's like too fun, way too funny.
So hang on. It would be funny if you hired a babysitter who beat your son.
Well, it wouldn't be fun, but yeah, it'd be in a way sort of just like way too fun. Like I think a lot of times when these things happen, aggression, violence, um, things going that horribly wrong, it's like a joke, but instead of a joke that someone says, it's a joke that they act out the joke. It's like a form of sarcasm that instead of just saying the joke and then laughing, then they say the joke and don't laugh, and then they keep saying the joke, and then they insist upon it that it's not a joke, it's the truth, and then they start acting it out, and then they start shoving Jews into ovens, doing
All
whatever
right,
crazy
hang on.
thing it
I feel we're jumping all over the place here.
is.
Okay, so in terms of your parents' violence, what manifested? What did they do?
All there Well, I don't wanna get into too much of I don't wanna give too much of a graphic look into the crazy house I grew up in, but they had a really bad anger problem and couldn't calm themselves down. They had no way realizing, fully realizing uh, what's important, their
Okay,
family,
sorry,
their
that's a bit too
child and their
foggy. Sorry to
responsibilities.
interrupt. I don't know what they had no way of knowing. That's mind reading. I don't know what that means. But okay, I mean, you don't have to get into graphic detail, but did they hit you and your siblings with implements like belts or sticks, or did they hit with open hands or closed fists, or how
Oh,
was
yeah.
the?
Yeah, they were hitters. They were yellers, screamers, emotional and hitters. Yeah, they'd hit you on the face, slap you right across the face when you're just barely out of diapers kind of people.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
monstrous. And did they?
yeah,
You said that they
I
were kind of
agree.
out of control.
I would say so. Not most of the time they weren't, most of the time they weren't, but sometimes, yeah.
Oh, so they
Just
hit
with
you and your siblings across the face in public?
no, no. So always in public, they would put on they they would never in public. It was always
Okay,
when
so
they
they
were
were sorry, so they were
they had
100%.
no
Hang on. So they were 100% in control. They were never out of control. Because
right.
if you have
I
epilepsy,
agree.
like you can be on the subway or you can be in the middle of a job interview, and if the epilepsy strikes, so the epilepsy strikes. You're out of control of it. But if they're constantly, pleasant and smiling and positive and not violent in public, but then in private they hit, then they're perfectly in control.
Yeah, I heard you make that point before on your podcast years ago, and that really, gosh, it really, I hadn't really thought about that until I'd heard it from you, and I was like, wow. I was like, that
Well,
is
yeah,
so, they are so guilty.
but it hasn't integrated because you're still trying to tell me they're out of control.
I don't mean I don't mean that they're out of control. Well, I think I mean it in a different way than how you're taking it here.
No, we have to use English in the same way, right? We can't just say two and two make four. Well, I meant the opposite, right? And I'm not trying to be a
Um,
nag. I'm really not. I'm just there's something that hasn't quite connected, at least in what I've talked about over the years and how you talk about it now. And I know that one of the issues that you messaged me about is things like dating and issues with that.
s- so yes,
So what I'm saying is that if you treat, child assault as a joke or as sarcasm, that's going to be very disconcerting to people, and you're not probably going to get quality women into your environment. So we can get into that over the course of the conversation, but
well, that's not to justify it or to say it's any good or that it's or anything like that.
well, if you say something's funny, it's usually not considered to be really negative. So, but let me ask. So, what happened with the Trump derangement thing? Your wife, was she in university, or was there a kind of very leftist group that she was a part of socially, or how did she kind of break orbit from libertarianism, minarchism, and anarcho-capitalism and go what, full lefty?
Well, I don't know. That's how I define funny is that it's sort of when something's wrong, it's sort of funny, like it's sort of how Ayn Rand defines it too. It's sort of when something is an error, you let that humor is sort of that metaphysically destructive force that you laugh at what is absurd or wrong, and the things that are the most wrong are is in a way kind of the funniest things of all, but that doesn't mean they're fun or
Oh,
that
that's
we should
sorry, bro.
sin more so that
I
there should
gotta.
be more grace.
I couldn't disagree with you more. Ayn Rand is one of the least funny writers in the history of the world. There's like two comic bits in her entire set of novels, and her evil guys were like really evil, and there was not much funny about it because they got lots of people killed. But anyway, so yeah. So what happened in terms of your wife? Did she
Well,
just
that's what
flip one day? Did she drift, or where was the influence that was coming in from outside the marriage and her own intellectual and moral history?
I think Rand would probably take that as a compliment. Most of her novels aren't funny. I bet she probably doesn't didn't wouldn't think they were either. Probably took them very seriously, is how she would say it. But yeah, my ex-wife and all her friends, I don't know, they just started got into that just kind of weird liberal, whatever. It's not really liberal in the classical sense, right? But the libs, they should get into the echo chamber and just all be um, stirring each other up into this kind of mob-like hysteria to hate Trump, and then me sticking my neck out saying, "I don't think he's really all that bad," like you guys are saying. They ended up kind of treating me like I was him, and then it just started getting more and more out of hand until they were really just constantly bullying me, stigmatizing me, treating me like crap. And it started off in just small ways that were, I was like, that are subtle enough that I was like, maybe I'm just imagining it. Maybe I'm being overly sensitive. Maybe it's me and I'm just, um, you know, so I start to blame, myself to avoid conflict and to avoid starting to, maybe starting something that isn't really there, that maybe I just hallucinated or something, right? but then over time, it just, keeps happening. And then it starts getting worse. And then, eventually it's like boiling the frog. At some point, though, the frog notices that it's in hot water. And I was like, I could feel her slipping away from me. I could feel um, our social circle turn into a bunch of craven wolves howling around us and trying to destroy our marriage to like, I don't know, fight Trump or something, or prove they're not racists or something so stupid like that. And these were all we all started out as friends.
Ah, interesting. Okay. And then did you try to sort of pull back from politics or appease, or how did things go towards like the last 6 months?
Well, no, I'm so I've been obsessed with politics since I was like practically still a kid. Like in junior high school, I started getting obsessed with politics. I started listening to talk radio, reading books about politics, watching television and watching like the news and being kind of more into politics than into, my friends are into sports or, something else kind of more normal. It wasn't like nowadays, where everyone's obsessed with politics. Everyone got these phones and now they're all trying to take over the world or something, and they're obsessed with politics. Back when I was in middle school and high school, if you were obsessed with politics, you were like a nerd or something. Most people didn't really even know anything about politics. I feel like they still don't today. They just act like they do by increasing the emotional tenor of their shrill cries over the phone to not be racist. Like 3 or 4 bumper stickers, don't be racist, believe women. 3 or 4 bumper stickers from like the 90s that they just keep screaming louder and louder and more violently like crazy people. But back then, I felt kind of, I don't know. I can see maybe the appeal of thinking that you're sort of smarter than other people by being engaged in politics, and that you're maybe kind of a better person than other people, and that you're more, you have more gravitas. You have a wider horizons, and and you're part of something bigger than yourself. And so I could see, that kind of appealed to me when I first started getting into politics, and my baser instincts, and it probably is part of the draw for all of these mad crowds clamoring for the throne or whatever over their phones nowadays. But I've been obsessed with politics. So when I'm engaged in politics, I just get so triggered that I have to keep talking about it and arguing with whatever everyone's saying, even while my actual real life, my relationship with my wife is unraveling in all of this. These guys are all, arguing with me about politics, and it just doesn't clock to me. I don't feel it um, loud enough to take action soon enough, as loud as I feel I don't know, kind of sort of the fun of just debating with people online, debating with people on Facebook and Twitter, and with my friends and stuff. I didn't realize how seriously they were targeting me personally. I thought we were just friends and it was all a friendly debate. We were having fun until it was too late. Um, and so
Well,
I
no,
would engage
you
with
said
them.
Trump derangement syndrome. You kind of thought it was friendly.
Well, not towards Trump. It certainly wasn't friendly, but they're not friends with Trump. But I thought they were still my friends. But even
Okay,
though they're
so
saying
sorry. So what happened
some
over the
goofy
last?
things about Trump to copy what their Democrat friends are saying or their liberal friends are saying, but
Okay, so you saw your wife slipping into the arms of this sort of hysterical anti-Trump coven, like almost like a bunch of witches or something like that. And
yeah,
what was your? I mean, I've always said that politics is very serious business, right? I mean, this is the
yes.
against me argument that they want people who are statists want you thrown in jail for disagreeing with them, like they're bloodthirsty jackals for the most part. So, if you've been listening to me for, you said, was it 2011 or 2013?
Yeah, in 2013, I
2013.
listened to I listened to a whole bunch of your podcasts on parenting to in order to be a better parent and do the best for my son and just to continue my
Okay, hang on. Sorry, I
studies
just I
in.
just needed the year. I don't need a re-explanation. Okay, so your wife is moving further and further into this witch hunt of anti-Trumpism, and they're labeling you, what is the worst word in the leftist insult bag is
Yes.
racist, right?
Yep.
And so you still felt, sorry, I don't know why that's funny, but you still felt it was not so serious?
um uh, uh, Sorry, what's the question?
You still felt that it wasn't too serious, that they were still thinking of you as a friend and it was kind of like play fighting?
Yeah, it's what kind of just, doing with each other what the all we hear all of them doing, just yeah, sparring, just kind of, talking about politics and just kind of telling jokes and telling each other what we're hearing out there, but that it wouldn't go so far that they would they would get confused and want to lynch me
Okay,
or
so when did you, sorry to interrupt, when did it first begin to dawn on you that it was dangerous, that this was very serious stuff?
well, I started to somewhere around 20, maybe I don't know, probably by 2018 when my ex would just start picking fights with me over, and we would start fighting over stupid stuff, and we would just, and the fights would be irrational. They would make no sense at all, and uh, and I noticed we would start talking to about, we would start talking so fast and talking over each other, interrupting each other, and talking louder, faster, until almost, if I could go back and play the tape, we'd just probably sound like two chimps screaming at each other. And and I would like remember like the last thing she or I had just said 3 seconds ago. I'd be playing back in my mind what during these episodes and just kind of complete word salad and silly and like just kind of funny they'd actually sound, but neither one of us were laughing. We would just be squared off fighting with each other. And when I noticed that when it finally clicked and dawned on me that that's how it always starts, then I started I started to strategize, so that we'd stop fighting, and so then when I could kind of feel it coming on where we start talking a little bit faster and sort of sniping at each other, sort of get a spiteful tone and kind of I could just feel it coming on, I would take a little bit of a step back from her, kind of angle a little bit away from it to where I've turned a little bit away from her instead of squared off with her, and then I would just get still and go quiet and just listen instead of, trying to keep the pace with her until we're both talking so fast and loud, we're interrupting each other and saying nothing, that I would just listen to whatever she was saying, um, and not be trying to come up with what I was going to say back, but actively listen to what she was saying and then wait for her to completely finish talking and just be looking at me, waiting on me to respond before I would say anything back. And then I would, while I was actively listening, would be making like a checklist in my mind of my responses to pretty much just give her everything I could that she was arguing with me about and just agree with her. Anything I could possibly just write off and say, this is yours. I don't want to fight over it because it's just all a bunch of nothing pretty much. And, and that if there was anything that was, she said that was really wrong for her to say, then that would have to disagree with or object to or add something that she's forgetting to include in whatever she's saying, then I would also then I would, I would have a mind of my own and not just be a complete pushover or anything, but I also wouldn't fight over anything that wasn't real and just let her have all of it. And, and, oh gosh, Steph, all these emotions are coming up now because I found it was starting to work. It was actually big. I found that that I could tell she could notice, something had changed. And it was almost kind of like magic doing that, Stefan, because we had gotten into a rut where that was like a routine. We'd go through fighting with each other. And I had pretty much managed to resolve it just by doing that. And then, and I could see her kind of, I don't know, her attitude toward me during the rest of the time had kind of shifted some. And I was like, wow, this is working. I'm saving our relationship, and, we're doing better. I didn't even have to get therapy or counseling. I figured this out. And then, and just as things were starting to get better, I don't know how, her friends found out that things were getting better or what, but, or if it just happened to be at that time that they really started gunning for me and pushing hard, and all her friends, cousins and stuff, people talking to her saying, he's no good for you. He doesn't care about you. He's a racist. All this stuff. He doesn't love you. He's not, he, you know, you can do better than him, whatever they were telling her. And then, uh, then the levels of abuse, of stigmatizing me, of interpreting anything I say or do in the most absurd, stupid possible light, that to paint me as, yeah, a villain and a monster when I wasn't, had just went into overdrive from all of them and from her. And, and that was where I just pretty much threw up my hands, and it became despondent that I just lost her. I just lost her. Well, all my friends, that these guys are just evil, just evil demons. Instead of being my friends and these nice people that I thought that they were before, and they seemed like before, that they become like this zombie apocalypse or something, and it just all lost their minds, and trying to just that had a real murderous intention toward me, that they really hated me. And so we got, but that by 2019, we by the end of, let me see, um, somewhere there in, pretty much we spent all of 2019 just doing the divorce, the lawyers, her running around downtown with a bunch of
Sorry,
like,
but how did it actually end after this? Like, did she leave, or was there some big event?
I moved out. I moved to another town nearby, put some space between us. She started running around downtown with these like smart Jewish and Italian lawyers that were like all 20 years older than me, and all make more money than I was making. And, um, hanging out in nice classical Greek marble buildings downtown with the big government placards on it with those guys. And, I don't think she did anything with them, but, she just, kind of paid them with, our family's money to hang out with her, all like that, and kind of just run around with those guys. And then, they ordered me to give her like any money I had left, and, and custody of my son, with me getting to see him some of the time, like a fourth of the time or something, and her getting to see him the rest of the time, and her being the primary custodian, and me being the bad guy and all this stuff. And, she comes from her parents are well to do, and she had a lot of money to work with to pay those guys, in addition to my spending our family's money. Then she has help from her family too, and I didn't really have that. So, she had more money to beat me at that game. And I was a pretty broken, defeated man at the end of 2019. But I was also just kind of glad that it was all over, and that I was definitely relieved after just it had been like a couple years of just nonstop pogrom against me, for just telling them Trump's not so bad. And then I ended up living on my own, and trying to just start fresh, and start my life over again with what I'd learned. And then the pandemic hit, boom, and the whole world, just went crazy right after I had um, landed on my feet to strike out on my own. And I've just been kind of wobbling ever since, and never have gotten back to that point, the point I was when I met her, or by the time we had divorced, in terms of making money, staying busy, finding enough work to do, making enough money, and I've just been homeless. I've actually been off and on just over the past, let's see, since 2020. Um, it's 2026 now. It's been like 5 years, 5 or 6 years. I've probably spent almost like straight years worth of that time. So probably 30 months or so off and on during this past 6 years, on the streets, stopped through shelters. The shelters are exactly what it says in A Christmas Carol. Some people would rather die than go to the shelters. They're just dreadful. They're just lice infested, drug infested, mental illness infested, really, really gross, nasty places. And the staff there are abusive towards the homeless guys, and the homeless guys are abusive towards each other. And it's just an awful place to go, at least to get some free food and a bed, until they kick you out at 4 in the morning to clean the place, or 4:30 in the morning to clean the place. And get some lice for sleeping in the bed. So I haven't. I've visited. I've been to a couple of shelters. I've learned what they're like, and I spent most of my time homeless, just lone wolfing it, sleeping just wherever I could find parking garages, um, behind buildings and stuff where people don't really go, just out in kind of um, uh, abandoned lots or whatever, where people there's not a lot of people, um, and just using my laptop and my phone in coffee shops to try and dig my way out and make as much money as I can to try and get me. And sometimes I'll be able to put some together and then get a roommate, and rent a room for a while. But then I always run out. It's been a pretty tough time for me, emotionally and psychologically. I just missed her so much, and I was so heartbroken by my loss, and missed my son so much, and was just so psychologically just wounded by having my entire family turn on me, and it raised to the surface all the wounds from my childhood, of my family of origin, and their mistreatment of me. And I was like, man, my life has just been such a hard, absurd, upsetting, stupid life, and I'm just so sad and sick over it. And so it's been kind of tough for me to get my bearings and pull myself together, and do better. And in the meanwhile, my obsession with politics has just, probably only gotten worse. And so I have like an internet addiction, and probably spend more time posting comments about politics, trying to think of smart and funny things to say about the political issues that people are talking about, and try and win the comment box or whatever, than I probably should be spending for a guy who's having trouble paying his own bills. But I've always been kind of lured on by the hope that maybe that's how I could pay my bills, because I feel like I could be good enough at it that I could do that. But realistically, I just need to find a job, and something, just anything, gas station, pizza place, restaurant, just whatever I can get, and just at least work my 40 a week and pay, live decently. But that's just been real tough, to do that. In the city where I started out, um, I wasn't able to find a place to live at any rate, because the rent was so high, because the city's been growing so fast. So then I moved to a different city where the rent's not so high, and there's some more places that you can rent, but the job market in the different city where the rent's not so high is just abysmal. I applied for like 100 places to go to work, last year, um, and got no job out of it. So there's something I'm doing wrong. But I think it could be just that. nobody's hiring in the city I live, so I may have to move again, but I'm just so low on cash. It's just to scrape enough together for the bus ride to another city and take a big risk. I don't even know if it would, how what kind of could be out of the frying pan and into the fire. So I've been in good spirits and cheerful and optimistic. And I think, I live in the United States of America during the 21st century, and I'm a smart guy. I'm determined. So I believe I'll eventually get through it. But it has been, oh gosh, Stefan, it's been a really painful, I would say, harrowing journey for me, alone without my family, without either my family of origin or the family I married. And to know my son is just most of the time wondering where his dad is, and that his mom hates his dad, and everything, and then to meanwhile be poor, homeless, to get lice, to keep getting lice, to keep getting sick. It's just to freeze during the winters, to wake up and have to walk for an hour before my feet finally unfreeze some winter nights has been. I never expected to go through so much um, poverty and loss in my life, until going through this. But I believe that I read a book once, that where the author said, in any adversity, there's some kind of value that's either equal to or even greater than the adversity that you can find in it through growth. And I'm just hoping for that, and that's what I'm holding out for. That somehow that I can make it worth it. That I've been through all this.
Gosh, what a story. I'm incredibly sorry about what you've experienced. That's brutal, and that is very, very tough. And I think I've slept rough once or twice in my life for various reasons, but not in a repetitive way. And I'm really sorry. That's very tough. And are you able to see your son at all at the moment, or how's that going?
Yeah, she stopped. When I first started being homeless, when I lost my place after the pandemic and everything, my ex stopped sending. I didn't have a place for my son to come stay with me during my parenting time, but she'd at least let me talk to him on the phone. And a couple times she even brought him out to just visit me at like McDonald's and play Minecraft with me on our laptops in McDonald's. And so that was really nice of her to show that kindness a couple times. But then I don't know who got to her to get her to stop doing that. But then she stopped, and then she stopped. Then in 2020, by 2022, I'd call and no one would pick up the phone. I'd email and my son wouldn't email me back. And that was really heartbreaking for me because she knew I had no money to get lawyers and enforce the law, that the family law for our family that she wrote, that she got a bunch of lawyers to write and register with our county. And so she's sort of breaking the law. I understand it because I'm homeless, that sort of makes it different, but also, not even no phone, cutting him off from talking to me on the phone or answering my emails is, I, I, I fantasize that someday I'll have the financial means to get a lawyer and redress all of this, and that in court, they may find that she, had done some wrong here.
So when did you last see him?
Hmm. Um, 2022,
Right.
yeah, 2022. So yeah, it's 2026 now. So and he's gonna turn 13. So these are formative years. I just worry he's not drinking enough milk. I just worry when I grew up. There was always, my parents hit me and stuff, and that was, there's no way I'm the same person I would have been. I was more timid, less confident. My dad wanted to enter me in sports and stuff when I was like 6 and 7 years old. By the time I was like 8, he didn't even bother. By the time I was like maybe 8 or 9, he stopped even. signing me up for baseball and basketball because, I would just kind of stand there like a dud and not really do anything. It's like, well, at home, you guys are beating me up and stuff, like, so I don't know what, yeah, I don't know exactly how that, the biomechanics of how that works or the evolutionary reason why, maybe I just didn't feel safe or, maybe I was just, trying to, maybe I was so displeased with them that I could see he wanted me to play hard in sports and, be his pride and joy and, show that his son is good at sports and stuff. And I didn't want to do it for him because they were kicking my ass at home. If it was that, or if there's some kind of that I was just actually depressed and timid and scared to do my best because at home I'm just sitting there, just a bright eyed, healthy, happy child, mm, and I get hit for it. So what? I who knows why, but so so sorry. What was the question? Sorry, I lost the train of thought.
No, no, that's fine. I was just asking when you had last seen your son. It was 2022. And did you, in the divorce, did you have any child support obligations, or how did that go?
Yeah, some child support obligations and that I was paying as long as I was able to, and then after I had ran out of even enough money to pay my own rent, I'm a little behind on those bills, but
I
she's been a
imagine,
little
yeah, I
behind.
imagine so. Yeah, so neither of you is particularly complying, and that's tough,
No,
right? Okay.
yeah.
Now, tell me a little bit about your sort of work history. And I mean, did you get any kind of education, or what were you doing to make money in your 20s?
Yeah, well, I went to a really nice private Christian school, a private Christian music school, that has a good business department. So that the idea is this: that these they won't graduate and all be starving musicians, but that they'll understand the business and the industry side and understand that it is a business if they're going into it as a career. So I went mostly to just get a business education, but also appreciated the musical, how musical all my friends at school were and the teachers and what a musical place it was very lovely. And I graduated. I got my degree in 2009, and I had always wanted to start a business so that I could make as much money as I possibly could doing something that I really like doing. And I was looking at this internet just burgeoning at that time in 2009 and going like, well, I love the low marginal cost of distribution of the internet. It's just a perfect, business model if you want to have a really high profit business with a large impact on the world, fixing some problem for many, many, many people, and then getting paid, as big as all the problems you solved by doing it. So I was thinking, I want to start an internet business. So I want to go to college to learn business. So that if it's successful, then I can, run it, be good at running a business. And then after I graduate and then during college, campaigned for Ron Paul. I became obsessed with, the Ron Paul movement, Rand Paul. I actually helped Rand Paul get his first, little tranche of donations. I organized his first money bomb in 2010 and helped him get like $50,000 and his name mentioned in all the Kentucky newspapers. So I was really proud of that. And then most of my work was in journalism, writing, and that because Ron Paul said, "Hey, we don't need more guys in politics. We need more guys in media. Media is where the power's at, not in politics." And so I heard that and I was like, okay, well, so I'd been politically active. So I was like, well, I want to get good at doing media then and be a, make, produce digital media that people really love. and that has a good programming in it that's good for people and that helps advance these values uh, that in part I'm trying to advance by through politics. So um, I started writing for a bunch of different publications, a nonprofit um, based out of San Diego, a and then I started writing for different kind of political publications, but working in media and working at it from as a journalist, not as a political activist, and learning journalism. And I was doing okay. That's what I was doing when I met my wife, and I was making like $30,000 from being the editor for a publication, and then I was working part time writing posts for another publication that was just a marketing sort of a marketing to market a, a movie about like rebels trying to um, get people in their economy to use silver to disrupt the government's control over them through fiat currency, which I thought was a fun idea for a movie, and the movie looked cute and cool, and they were paying me like another. I was making, I think, like another about $1,000 a month working for them, like $800 to $1,000 a month working for them, and then I think I had one other gig is maybe making me another like 5 grand a year. So with all it together, I was like up into the mid 40s when I first met my wife, um, and she could see I was a hard worker and that I was entrepreneurial and creative and doing really well for myself at that age for a millennial. Um, and so she probably found all of those qualities and everything pretty attractive. And then after getting married, though, after 2012, I just kind of uh, had been I don't know. I just needed to kind of take a step back. I felt sort of like kind of lost in all of what I'd been doing and needed to sort of take a step back and get an overview. Like, what am I even doing? Like, I started feeling like I don't know, like a sort of sense of like absurdity or like there was like I wasn't really actually doing anything that was making a difference in the world, or that maybe I was doing something but didn't actually know what it was, like how I was really impacting, how it really fits into the world, and am I being used by something bigger than me? Sort of fear that, I know how politics and media can work, and so I don't want to, I didn't want to be naive and use my talents towards something that is actually using me to hurt my values instead of help them. So I just kind of took a step back and got a job selling cars, and I started selling cars at a at a new Toyota dealership, but we also had a big used car lot as well. And I sold new and used cars. I worked for them for um, 32 months, so almost 3 years. Um, and and I was an okay salesman. I was above average. I wasn't one of the best there, um, but I did okay, and I got to learn from some just really cool guys that used to sell cars in like the 80s and 90s who are just real funny, irreverent, blue collar humor kind of guys, and just like really badasses in terms of their like mentality and stuff. It was pretty fun just hanging out with those guys and cutting up with them. And, I feel like those guys have the sort of Trump energy, and it was fun to sell cars with those guys. Even I wasn't, you don't really make very much money selling cars unless you're like the top guy or the top maybe 2 or 3 guys at the dealership or one of the managers. But I did okay though. I did better than if I just was working at a Wendy's or something. So it was all right, even though the hours were long, because I was learning so much from just what those guys were like. And then the sales force was always churning. They had this very high turnover rate in the car dealerships. and at the one I was working at. So I got to learn from just meeting all these people and then meeting new customers every day and meeting new customers that are like, they're all pretty much winners. Like they're going to a dealership to buy a new car, to drop some cash for a new car, to go into debt with a good credit score for like 5 years and get a car. So these are guys that are winning at that time you meet them, and that are making good money and are taking an optimistic, positive step forward to get a vehicle with the latest safety features and MPGs and everything for their fuel economy, and showing them the car and the technology and stuff and driving it with them. And so I was just meeting so many good people that even if I wasn't making as much money as I would have liked to have been making and be the best guy there. Those guys were more experienced than me is why they just stuck there around long enough to be the top guy there, or the manager there. And so I was there for 3 years, and then I had to decide: do I want to keep sticking around long enough um, to be one of those guys here and really make the money and lean into this and make this a career,
Sorry, but
or do I want to?
what were you making as a car salesman?
I was making I would sell like 15 cars a month, and I'd sell like 12 or 15 cars a month, and I would make like 3 grand or 3,500 a month. And I would give like 500 of it a month to Blue Cross Blue Shield for health insurance, the money I just never got back and will never see again. And I've had some health problems since being homeless, and I'll never get that money back because I'm not paying on the policy anymore. So gosh, I paid taxes during that time, and I gave the insurance company even more money, like $6,000 a year of my money, and I'll never get that money back. It's so upsetting.
And I still don't quite figure. I mean, so you were making less money doing this than you were writing and editing in politics. So you said that there was sort of a crisis in meaning, or that you thought that you might be being manipulated to some sort of immoral end, or I didn't quite follow that part.
Yeah, after at the end of 2012, I just took after the election and everything, I just kinda took a step back, just kind of think about, what is you do I even know what I'm doing? Is by even, because I'm sitting here trying to fight all the things that I think are bad for our economy and our society, bad for humanity. But by doing that, am I actually giving them more power? Am I drawing people's
But you're
attention
still
to
doing it now.
I know.
So
I know.
I don't understand why you would, you said, well, you're still spending too much time trying to fire these verbal bombs across the prows of ships on the internet, sort of politically
Right.
speaking, right? So I can understand if it's like, oh, maybe this is an addiction, it's taking over my life, but you're still doing it, except you were getting paid, then you got paid less to go do cars, and I don't quite understand the
I I'm an
existential crisis.
I'm an institutional man now, Stefan. I wouldn't know how to live in the real world. I feel like
But no, but I'm talking about back then. Yeah,
right.
back then. Like what happened that you bailed out of politics and went
Uh,
into selling cars for less money?
really, it was just thinking about it. It's just just thinking about it and thinking like, am I? Uh, I'm a really thoughtful person. I'm kind of an intellectual. I think, I really spend a lot of time thinking, learning, always hungry to learn more and to think about what I'm learning, to learn.
Okay, sorry.
And
I can't let you go off at another
oh, sorry,
abstraction.
no, I'm
Just tell me
no, let
why
me,
you
yeah,
got out of politics. Well, because you were getting paid 40, 45 grand back in the day, which is like 60, 70, or 75 grand now. So you're getting paid 40, 45 grand to do politics, and then you say, well, has no meaning. I'll go make, 35 thou instead selling cars, which has less meaning than politics. But now you're doing politics for free. So I'm just trying to understand what your thinking was,
because like
why you left the politics stuff.
Mr. Obama had just got reelected that November of 2012, And I was like, do I spend the next 4 years just saying Obama, Obama, Obama over and over again to say criticisms of him, but does that actually help him? Does that actually promote him? Even though I'm saying something to criticize him, does it do does the system end up stealing my efforts to actually help what I'm trying to dismantle? And the
Okay, but
answer to
sorry,
that
sorry.
at the
So
time for me was, I don't know. And so I just kind of took a step back
no, but
and I was
where
okay.
did that? I mean, there were lots of people who continued fighting against some
Yeah,
of Obama's extremism and so on, and the whole Marxist thing that he seemed to be pretty heavily influenced by. So there was a lot of people who were fighting about that. And then later, I mean, Trump was fighting against all of that, and you got involved in that. I'm trying to sort of understand. You're big on Ron Paul, you're big on Rand Paul. Obama comes in, you bail out to the car industry, and then you come back for Trump just in time to detonate your marriage. And I'm just trying to follow that. That's a bob and weave that I don't follow the thinking of. Like if you said, well, geez, politics is just sucking my soul dry, and it's then why get back into it at the expense of your marriage, and why now continue to do it at the expense of an income? That's what I'm trying to like. Did you
right.
change your mind about that? Were you
Well,
wrong about
well,
that with regards to Obama?
right. Well, I definitely wouldn't have made the calculation at the time that it's worth blowing up my marriage, to get back into politics. I just didn't know that that's what I was doing. Um, But, and to I think I stopped and after it was after I stopped selling cars that I wasn't able to make that 45 grand a year again, um, not right away, uh, striking out,
Okay, sorry.
getting
I'm
back
still
on my
trying
own,
to.
getting back on the
Sorry,
internet.
sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. So, just you can talk, man, and I need to ask some questions. So,
Sure.
I'm still trying to understand. So, did something in particular happen? Did you wake up one day? Did you have any substance abuse issues? Did you take any drugs? Like, was there anything that happened where you're like, politics is meaningless, and I'm going to go sell cars? Because selling cars is certainly less meaningful than politics, right?
I don't think so. I mean, people need transportation, and that's
Okay, so please,
cars are.
please, please, let's not go at this level where you tell me that people need transportation. I'm aware that people need transportation, but if you have a crisis of meaning, don't you go more philosophical, or maybe you join a monastery, or I don't know what. But saying I'm having a crisis of meaning, I'm going to go sell cars. And again, there's nothing
Well,
wrong with selling cars, but if it doesn't solve a crisis of meaning, does it? Especially when you're
I'm
making less money.
I'm not sure what you mean by a crisis of meaning. I just didn't want to make things worse. I just wanted to help, and make things better. And I just wasn't sure if I was or not. And so, and I was worried maybe
Okay,
I'm
so hang
not.
on. So who did you talk to about that? Because that's a pretty big decision, because you were giving up on all of the skill set and all of the contacts that you'd made. I mean, how long had you been working in politics by this point, or how long had you been writing and fundraising and so on?
I guess, yeah, for probably 2 or 3 years.
So 3 years, okay. And this was your resume, right? So your resume and your contacts and your skills and all of that were in the realm of politics. And
Yeah.
I don't quite understand why you left politics. I mean, maybe you said, well, gee, I wonder if I'm helping the enemy or whatever. But I mean, you would sit down and talk about that with people, right? I mean, you had lots of contacts and you chew it through, and lots of people did stay in for the fight, right?
I mean, really just that was just a conclusion I came to thinking about it on my own, not really through any conversations with anybody, but just sitting there at the end of the day thinking about my work and what I'm aiming for and what I'm trying to do. And, um, you
Okay,
know,
what I'm aiming
uh,
for and what I'm trying to do doesn't tell me anything. Let me ask you this, and I don't know because of course I wasn't in your mind back in the day, and we didn't have a conversation back in the day. Do you think that you were correct in leaving politics when Obama was reelected, or if you could have give yourself a message back in time, given that you're still now doing it somewhat obsessively, I think, by your own admission for free, was it a bad decision to leave politics and go into selling cars?
I'm glad no, I would go back and still go into selling cars. It was good for me to become a well-rounded person and keep learning. And yeah, I needed to at that time as well, just for myself. um, I felt like I kind of got to the end of it at that time, and that I really learned all I could, and that I
No, no,
needed to
no. Come
work
on.
on.
Come on. Come on. Don't sell me this. Man, I'm not buying a car from you, man. Don't sell me this nonsense. Oh, you see, Steph, I was in politics for 2 to 3 years in a tertiary role, and I'd learned all there was to learn about politics.
Oh, sure, why not? No,
No, of course, of
not
course.
that I'd
Like
learned
Ron
all there
Paul is
was, but
90 and he's still learning about politics, and he's a freaking genius. Okay,
right.
so don't sell me this idea that you had learned all there was to learn after a couple of years in politics at a fairly
W
junior level.
well well, not all there is to learn, but maybe all that I could have at that time continuing the way I was. Sometimes you gotta kind of go into a different mode to stay healthy and try something
Yeah,
else
that's
to.
just I mean, that's just fortune cookie stuff, right? And I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't know. You could say that about anything. I could say, well, honey, I'm quitting doing online philosophy and I'm going to go and become a mime in the smoking ruins of Paris, right? And I've said, well, I feel I've learned all I can learn in philosophy, and sometimes you just got to mix things up and you got to change things, and I need to be more well rounded. Like these are just sounds like that they don't actually convey any meaning or content.
uh, I disagree, and I wasn't taking a vow of silence or anything, but
Okay,
I was
hang
trying to
on. No, no,
become
no, no.
more
I'm
gregarious.
hang on. Okay, let's not go down this road where you say to me like that's a total straw man, right?
What is
Did I ever accuse you of taking a vow of silence or anything like? Let's not have that aspect of the conversation. I'm just trying to understand because this was a pretty big decision that had huge ramifications for your life going forward, and I'm just trying to understand the decision. That's all. And if you say, well, I wanted to be more well-rounded and I'd learned all I can learn, like that doesn't convey any content to me. Maybe it makes sense to
Yeah.
you, but I don't understand it.
Yeah, you know how like Howard Rourke, it was like, I've learned all I can learn here. I'm going to move in onto something that I'm not as experienced with and try that for a while. And it just, helps you learn more.
No, but that's not what Howard Rourke did. Howard Rourke got fired for his integrity and ended up working in the
No,
in the quarry, right? And
right,
he didn't like love doing it. He just like, okay, well, I got fired for having integrity, so I have to go work in a quarry. But it wasn't a choice. Like he wanted to become more well-rounded. He would much rather have been an architect.
right. Oh, yeah. Um,
Okay,
in
listen,
my case, though,
if you don't know why, or maybe you know why, but you can't communicate it, that's totally fine. We can move on because I can only go back to the well so many times and get an empty
sure,
bucket.
sure.
Okay, so you moved on. You did a couple of years of selling cars, and then what?
Um, and during that time, people were especially if you're like a libertarian or an anarchist, and any tech savvy at all, people were starting to learn about Bitcoin, and so I was thinking about Bitcoin at the time, like, actually, this Bitcoin might do what Ron Paul is trying to do, that is never going to happen through Congress, that actually uh, the internet could do this. And I really liked that idea that you could maybe just go right around Congress and build an internet based financial system.
I'm sorry.
That
What year was this?
that was the same time around Trump. That was like in 2015 and 2016.
Okay, and were you still working in car sales, or what were you doing?
And I was selling cars, so I didn't really have the uh, the bandwidth to devote to learning about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. But I was starting to in my free time, I was still just using the internet, reading, hearing what people are saying, keeping my ear to the ground, following along as the world developed. And I was starting to get kind of excited about Bitcoin. I started talking to my friends about it, going, "What do you think about this?" And then by 2017, I started writing. I quit in 2016 at the very end of that. Right after this has become like a pattern. Right as soon as Mr. Trump gets elected, and November 2016, and much to many people's surprise and chagrin, And then I quit my job at the dealership and started learning about cryptocurrencies and continuing to follow our politics. And then I started um, writing my own, just kind of writing reports, I guess, just on my own and publishing them myself, just to learn and to think and practice, thinking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and then and to build up kind of a set of writing samples to get hired by like an outfit that is making money with news updates about Bitcoin, and which I did, and I got hired in 2018 writing for a cryptocurrency news website, and they were paying me very well because they a lot of those guys I think had a lot of money that they'd made from Bitcoin in 2017 during the big bull run up to with the price at 20,000 in December of 2017. And so those guys had a big budget to start a newspaper and pay journalists to write news updates. And what I found was that this space was moving so much faster than politics. There's so much more to write about, and that there was a different feeling to it. It wasn't just so negative and hateful and just evil. It was more like business and positive and fun and about, doing something good for the world, not fighting everybody. I was like, gosh, this Bitcoin stuff and these Bitcoin people are like magical or something. This is really kind of like the what anarchy is about, or like but at the same time, it's not overthrowing the government. It's creating a supplement to the financial system.
Okay,
By
no, sorry,
now we've
you
seen
don't need
this.
to sell me on Bitcoin. Just I need to get your career moving on so I understand what
Sure,
happened
sure.
next.
So then I started actually making a lot of money during that time when my ex was fighting me, and her friends were all hating on me and telling her to fight with me, and I was actually starting to make some pretty good money by the time we got divorced. And then the pandemic happened, my home business writing about cryptocurrency fell apart. um, I hadn't invested in any cryptocurrencies. I wasn't sure if is it ethical for me to be a journalist writing about it and invest in it. And I just didn't really have as much as I knew about the currency and stuff. I didn't really make as much money as a lot of guys who just invested in it and didn't say anything. And I was just reporting on it and trying to understand what was going on and trying to help other people understand it as a journalist. And um, uh, uh, haven't haven't really recovered since then, from the pandemic and just running out of work to do. And I've been applying for a lot of the same kind of jobs I've always done online, but I've just had I don't know if it's a streak of really bad luck or just random or what.
Are you getting to the interview stage?
Um, uh, Stefan, I'm not at this point. I'm not even getting any feedback at all that they even got my email or my application or anything. I think probably by now so many people are online that anything I apply for, 1,000 other people are or something.
Right. Okay.
That's the only thing I can think of what it is, because I know I've got a pretty good resume and that the work I do is pretty good. Like I don't really try to fool myself and think what I'm doing is any better than it really is, just to feel good about it. And I think a lot of my writing is like very professional and good, really good quality stuff that a lot of these guys I'm applying to work for would probably want, but I just can't even get in front of any. It's been so tough just to get in front of anybody because I think probably just hundreds of other guys are all applying anytime there's one job opening somewhere for the same job. Must be the math on it, is what I'm thinking, but I don't
Do you
know.
have any? I'm sure you've thought about all of this just to cross the checkbox off my list. Have you contacted the people that you used to work for?
Yeah, a lot of them, like the first place I started working for in 2018, the owner just in 2020 during the pandemic, they just shut the entire thing down and stopped publishing. the ad revenue model didn't make any sense anymore during that time, and they closed it down. Since then, they have reopened it, but he sold it to someone else, and so it's under new ownership. And I've sent him every so often, every few months, I send him another application and my resume and say, "Hey, I used to write for you guys. Here's the link to the page with all my articles. I was one of your best writers. It's like some months I was like three of the top five most highly trafficked articles from your website with the most organic traffic from Google News where I wrote those articles. I pitched the idea for the article and got it approved by the editor and wrote the article, and I hear literally nothing back, zero back from that publication. So it's been tough. Another publication I was writing for at that time, I still write for now, but they've just they also have, back then I was writing for them on a kind of more part-time basis. And now they had, I write one or two articles from a month. It's almost like I'm not even there anymore. I think they've probably budget has shrank a lot too or something.
Right. Okay. Well, again, it's a wild ride. It's some
I sh-
ups and downs for sure. And in the time that we have remaining, what's the most value that I could offer you in the call?
oh gosh, Stefan, I'm not sure. Hadn't really thought of that. Um, I was just looking forward to talking to you, and it really some of the conversation. I'm glad we went into everything we've talked about on this call instead of some of what I had raised in the box to sign up to call in. But I just thought I was going to call in and talk with you about how just awful dating is because listen to me. See, here I am home. I'm just a crazy person. I got to get my priorities in order because I'm sitting here thinking about dating and stuff, and I still haven't even gotten back up on my feet and everything. I guess I'm just a healthy man, is probably mostly why, but maybe not mentally healthy enough uh, not to see how silly that is. But
Yeah, I was a bit surprised because you said you wanted to talk about how all of the challenges you have dating, and it's like if the challenge is having a roof over your head, I think would be first and foremost because it's you're in your 30s, is that right?
yes, sir. I'm in my 30s. I'm in my late 30s. I'm about to be in my 40s pretty soon.
Okay, so you're pushing 40, and you need to get. I mean, obviously, you need to get a job. You know that you need to get yourself settled and sorted, and you need to get a grounding, right?
Right. Yeah. Anything I can get, man. I would work anywhere, man. At pizza place,
Okay,
a
so hang on. No, I
restaurant,
get it. So where have you applied in that realm?
Walmart, Target, everywhere. I've applied it just go down the street and just every store there is. I've applied to all of them in my city, I'm just in a city that is economy is just unusually um they've had a record year of uh, of of negative growth against the previous years, this in 2025. So I haven't been able to kinda find a job that way while also applying on my laptop. There's all the jobs I can find online in cryptocurrency, journalism and political journalism. And so online, just the economics of it, I think by now is just I'm competing against so many people. I just can't get through to anywhere, even with a pretty good resume. And then the economics of the city I'm in, just no one's hiring because all their budgets are down, their profit, they're all just losing money almost from the lack of customers they have this year or and last year over what they usually have.
Okay, well, how
So
much?
it's
Sorry, and you don't have any particular ties to the city you're in, right?
No, I mean, but I moved here in March. I took a Greyhound bus out here in March. I finally gave up on the city I was living in and decided to try a different place. And maybe I would have better luck. But I like the city and I like the people, and I could see living here long term. I just haven't been able to get a job yet, and I'm just super tired all the time from it's just exhausting to be poor this poor.
Oh yeah, yeah.
My head's on fire sometimes. My I feel like my eyeballs and ears are on fire, not sleeping well. Just it's tough. Not eating well, being stressed out all the time. It's kind of
No, it's
fried.
definitely it's a stress. Sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah, just fried. I'm just just kind of burning alive out here. Just slowly getting fried out here.
Right. And did you have any sort of? You said you'd had some health issues from living rough. Have those mostly resolved, or are they still in your system?
Yeah, they've actually got even while I've been going through all this, I've been able to. I got really sick. It was from I'll just admit it was from smoking cigarettes. It's a stupid mistake. I was smoking cigarettes and felt like, well, if I'm as long as I'm homeless, this is all I've got. At least I deserve a cigarette once in a while when I'm stressed. But uh, I started getting so sick. My neck started hurting, like a pain in the neck, like just like having strep throat, but not from strep throat, and not gone in a week or so, but just like after a couple months of my throat hurting like that, I was like, okay, I don't deserve, I don't deserve this at all. I quit smoking the cigarettes, but actually after I quit smoking, my neck started hurting worse and my ears started hurting and I started getting jaw pain and I was like, this is just terrifying. Like, okay, I have cancer. Like, what's going on now? How could my life keep getting worse? And so I just started Googling all my symptoms and Googling everything, like what to do. And so I quit smoking. I don't vape. I don't use the nicotine patches. I don't do anything. I quit smoking and I started drinking milk and I started, buying, the fresh ginger root, from Walmart, and just chewing on ginger root all day and, taking antihistamines and just doing everything I can to just chewing on ice, just doing everything I can to just ease the pain in my throat and ears and the back of my eyeball, and, it's actually gotten a lot that after doing that for a year or 2, it's just really gotten so much better. At first, I was afraid I had cancer or something, which is just kind of crazy, but maybe if I had kept going down that road, it could have turned into cancer or something, or maybe I went to a free clinic right before I moved out here. A couple months before I moved out, I went to a free clinic in the city I was before, and they ran a full blood panel. So the doctor said, here's a list of like 8 different markers that would all flag you as having cancer if you did, and none of them do. So you're okay. But yeah, don't keep smoking. So I just
Did they
haven't.
tell you what it might be?
Oh, they said, yeah, yeah, you have, you have, your tissues and organs, your thyroid, your central nervous system, your blood vessels and everything. They're all. You've been smoking a lot, so much that you know you got burnt. You burned yourself pretty bad,
My
and you
God,
just
how
have
much were
to.
you smoking?
I didn't think I was smoking that much either. I hear people say things like, when I was at my worst, I was smoking a pack a day and stuff like that. And I wasn't smoking a pack a day or anything. So I didn't think it was that bad. But then when it started hurting my neck and ears, then I had to take it seriously that it was time to quit.
Right. Okay. Okay. So health stuff is mostly resolved. Why? Because I saw the video briefly just when we started. Why do you wear your hair so long?
Um, I grew my hair long in college while helping out Ron Paul, and I thought it was just kind of fun to be because it was like the peace movement
So
and
like 20 years ago.
yeah,
So 20
and then
years ago. It's one thing on a 22-year-old. It's another thing when you're pushing 40.
well, I just got used to it. I
Do
feel
you
like myself
think
with long
do you
hair.
think that your very long hair is helping or hurting your employment prospects?
I could, nowadays I see people that are working at the places I apply to that look crazier than that.
Yes, do
Does a
they
bunch
have
of
histories of okay, when was the last time
fish
that you
tackle in their face.
No, no. When was the last time that you had a full-time job? Was it at the car dealership?
Um, Gosh, like the car, yeah, or it was I was self-employed, but it was in 2019 writing for the cryptocurrency
No, no, but I mean, like a
newspaper.
full-time job, like you went into an office, not like you set your own
Yeah,
hours and
yeah, yeah, 2016 at the dealership.
okay, so it's been a decade since you've had a full-time job, so it's gonna be tough to get a full-time job.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'll give you this advice for what it's worth. I've been a hiring manager at a couple of different places. I've interviewed like 1,000 people. I've hired like 100 people, and I've only had to fire two or three. It's a pretty good rate. What do you think your resume looks like coming across the wire?
Yeah, kind of crazy, but but also, I'm applying for entry level jobs, so I don't figure it probably should be a problem, but it could be it.
Well,
It
but
could
hang on,
be.
hang on, hang on. Like, just so you know, so if you're looking for an entry level job and you have sophisticated experience in politics and writing cryptocurrency newsletters, what do you think the hiring managers think of that?
um Overqualified.
Yeah, like why the hell is he why is he applying for this job?
Yeah, because it's I the .com bust happened, and I didn't make, I
Well,
wasn't one
no,
of
no,
the
because
ones
they
to.
hang on, hang on. If they know anything about that stuff, they know that crypto, I mean, it's down obviously, but it's still up a heck of a lot from 20K, right? So hiring managers are always looking for red flags, right? Just,
Oh yeah, I'm a
right?
walking red flag, Stefan. You're right, man. I just look crazy and
Well,
kind of
yeah.
weak.
So if I were in your shoes, right, get a haircut, like a serious, like a professional haircut, and you're gonna have to you're gonna have to look at your resume, not that it makes you look good, but that it fits where you're applying.
Right.
Right? Because I think most people with their resume, they say, "Well, I want to put everything that makes me look fantastic," right? And that's great, right? But if some guy's looking for a door greeter at Walmart and it's like, "Yes, I wrote the most trafficked cryptocurrency newsletters in this website's history," they'll be like, "What?" So
Yeah.
they know that you are looking for something way better than restaurant or gas station or something like that, and something has gone very wrong in your life. Now, and they also know that the moment you get back on your feet, you're gone, right? Like you're not going to stick around doing this for the long term, right? Like I remember when I worked at Pizza Hut and there were these old fossils who had all of the best sections, these women who were in their 60s and so on, and they had all the best sections, right? And I said, well, why can't I I mean, I'm a good waiter. Why can't I get the best section? And the boss said, because you're just passing through. You're going to go off to college. You're going to you're not going to be a waiter. These guys are waiters for the next 10 years. So I give them the best sections because they're sticking around. And, I grumbled, but I can see the logic, right?
Yeah, I should
So,
emphasize my business degree I probably I don't know really any what else I would do other than probably work if I were able
all
to
right, hang on,
get another job. Oh,
hang
go
on.
ahead.
Okay. So have I listened a lot?
Yeah,
I have listened
definitely.
a lot. Okay. So this is the part where you can listen if you want.
Sure.
Okay. Because I'm trying to help you here, right? And you talking is fine. It's good to give me information. But at some point, you have to stop talking and take some information. I think if you want to get the most value out of the call, if that makes sense.
I agree.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. So you have to tailor your resume for what you're looking for. Now, the problem is if you say, well, I worked as in politics, I was a car salesman, and then I did more politics and so on. And then there's these big gaps in your resume, right, where you were kind of homeless and really struggling, right?
Right.
Right. So just um, from the hiring manager standpoint, you got to put yourself in the other people's shoes, right? Now, listen, I say this, you're obviously a very, very smart guy, very competent, and but you've been struggling and battling for so long that the problem is that you think mostly about yourself, which I can completely understand, and it's a little tougher to slip into somebody else's shoes when you've been down at heel and struggling for so long. So I say this with not a shred of criticism. I would be exactly the same if I were in your shoes. So I say this with all humility. But what do hiring managers think if somebody who's well educated, smart, and has former success has really very little on their resume for the past half decade? What do they think?
Something went horribly wrong, which is exactly what
Okay, but
which
what
is
do
true.
they? But people fill in the gaps in their own minds, right?
Yeah.
So what do they think happened?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I can tell you what they think happened. Substance abuse.
Oh, yeah, this guy's got a drug problem?
Oh, he's got a drug problem, or he had a gambling problem, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's hard for people to understand how someone goes off the rails in this way. Now, of course, you can't put your divorce on your resume, and I get all of that, right?
Mhm.
So they're going to think something went really off the rails with this guy. And of course, I assume that you don't put your photo in with your resume, right?
I have a photo with my hair was short that I put in the resume.
Okay. How short?
It's just a good crew cut. That's a nice conservative haircut,
Oh,
good
how
looking
long
haircut.
ago was that?
Oh gosh, before the pandemic.
Okay, got it. Right. So right now, if you put forward vibes that people are like, well, geez, something real crazy happened with this guy. And the most common thing, I think, for a lot of people, and maybe there's other things that people could think of, but the most common thing that people think of is you were a drinker, you used drugs, you had a gambling addiction, or something that just kicked you all the way down the stairs, right? And then the problem is if you show up with this sort of wild long hair, then I think people are like, okay, so this guy's pushing 40 and he hasn't updated his look since college, right?
Yeah, that's some good advice. I'll definitely have to think about that. Maybe I should go ahead and get a haircut and see if that,
Well, there's
makes a
that, and
difference.
that could help. And I would also say that you should think about your resume from the receiving end, right? So let me ask you this: is anyone still selling cars these days? I don't know. There's still car salesmen out there, right?
Oh, yeah, there's still dealerships. Yeah,
Okay,
people still have
so
to buy cars.
have you applied there?
Um, uh I actually went to one dealership in the city and applied to be, just to wash the cars, just to get my foot in the door,
Uh huh.
maybe see about joining the sales force again. I'm not sure I wanna get back into it, but maybe I'd be happy
What?
for something less than that, but
What
if
are you
I could get a
talking
job
about?
selling
Hang on,
cars, I
hang
would.
on, hang on, princess. What do you mean you don't want to get back into it? You're homeless-ish.
Sure, but, it's like 80 hours a week, it's
You
stressful, you know?
are homeless-ish.
You think my best move would be get a haircut and just hit every dealership up in the city and see a lot of
Well,
those guys are
the
kinda
dealership is where you have the most practical experience because politics is tough, and you've
true.
also been out of the politics game for quite a while. So the dealership is where you have the most experience. Now, it's been 10
That's
years,
true.
and of course, if you have an interview, this is the problem, right? When you have an interview, they're going to say, "Huh, well, tell me a little bit about what you've been doing since you were selling cars," right? And what is your urge to say? What are you tempted to say?
Um, I I went into digital journalism, writing about cryptocurrencies.
Okay, and what else?
Um, that's it. I'd probably just say that and stop there.
Okay,
And
yes,
instead
because
of telling them all that I've told you on this
yeah,
call.
and look, I know that you wouldn't. Obviously, you're a smart guy. I know you wouldn't, but it's very tempting to overshare in those kinds of situations.
Just for the sympathy or whatever.
Well, and also, I mean, it all makes sense to you. And, we all have this urge to explain ourselves to others. And there's nothing wrong with that urge. That can be a very good thing to happen. But as far as, well, I had some health issues and I did some writing from home. The pandemic kind of kicked my butt. But, I'm back on my feet and I really want to I'd like to pick up where I was. I mean, I had some great time selling cars, and I really enjoyed it, and I'd love to get back into it. And so something like that, where you sort of give them the bare bones, but not too much, because they just you can also say, listen, you can give me a trial. You can put me, have me out there selling cars and see how many I sell in the first 2 weeks. And I'm happy to be an intern. Like, I get it. I've been out of the game for a while, but I'm obviously a very smart guy. I'm a fast learner, and I have good sales experience, man. I was selling like 20 cars a month. And so I would say that probably would be your best bet, because that's where you have the most economically valuable and validated experience. Now, of course, it's going to be kind of tough because it's been 10 years. Who knows where your manager is and what kind of reference you can get. But I'm sure you can get references from your cryptocurrency writing and stuff like that. But
Yeah, and
yeah.
I may be able to. Yeah, I may be able to. Find some of the guys I used to sell cars with, and be able to get some references from someone who's my manager.
Yeah,
Um,
or you can of course call them and say, "I'd like to get back into selling cars. Do you know anyone, or are you
right.
hiring, or anywhere?" Right? So anything like that where you can get to where the jobs are.
I think that's really great advice. I really, gosh, Stefan, I appreciate you taking my call and letting me share all of this with you
Hang on, hang on.
turning my.
I'm not
Oh, go
quite
ahead.
done yet. I'm not quite done.
Oh yeah.
And and also if people say, because the big question, if you say, well, I quit the car selling business to do cryptocurrency, right? And then of course people are like, well, geez, cryptocurrency's made a lot of money. Aren't you wealthy? Or, they wouldn't ask that directly, but you can say, look, I mean, roller coasters are fun when you're a kid. They're a lit like my daughter still wants to take me from time to time in the summer on roller coasters. Now I'm pushing 60, bro. Roller coasters are like, oh, it's not. I don't have quite the same relationship I had with roller coasters when I was younger than when I was younger. So, you can just say, I love crypto. Don't get me wrong, but it's a fickle mistress. And these ups and downs, I'm pushing 40. I really want to stabilize my life, and crypto is a blast, but it kind of burns out your adrenals after a while. Like I just need something more stable and predictable, and so on. And also, like the thing I like about selling cars is you're actually moving things that exist. Crypto is all just about chasing digits all over the all over hell's half acre, so I
Right.
like actually knowing that I put someone in some wheels and they can go and get a job, and they can go and pick up their kids in a safe car from daycare and all of that. So I like I'd spent the last couple of years in the virtual world in crypto, which has been great, but it's a real roller coaster. And in the end, I pushed bits around on computer networks, which is fine, I guess, but I'd rather do something a bit more tangible. Like there's things that you can use to explain it that will make more sense. But I mean, the biggest thing, the last thing I'll say, the biggest thing or the biggest challenge with this kind of life that you have right now, for which again I have massive sympathy, is you have, and I completely understand this. I mean, you have some anger and you have some bitterness, and I don't fault you for that at all. I don't fault you for that. Not that it would matter if I did, but I don't fault you for that. It's perfectly understandable. It does certainly seem like all the fate gods have conspired to kick you in the nads all the way down the stairs, and I hope it gives you some tiny bit of comfort that most people, maybe not quite to the extent, but most people have had a clusterfuck of terrible luck that sometimes has lasted for years. And, it is just about getting yourself back up off the ground and reforging a new kind of life. I'm obviously not putting myself in the same category. I've certainly had my tough times and I've slept rough and all of that. But, and I got, most of my income and listenership was wiped out like 5 years ago, as you know, in the deplatforming thing. So, I've had to, I don't know, rebuild a whole bunch of times in my life from virtually nothing. And so, the most important thing when you're on the phone or sitting in front of someone who might be able to offer you a job, you have to find a way to be comfortable with where your life has gone and where your life has been. And I know that you're struggling and striving for that, which I hugely admire, by the way. Like you're saying, there's lots of good things that can come out of bad things and all of that. And so you have to have a reasonably peaceful and philosophical view of the trials that you've been through. And you have to have a goal called getting back on your feet. And of course, as you know, I don't need to tell you this, but just to remind the listeners that the North Star by which you are guiding getting back on your feet is your son. Because as you say, your son you haven't seen since 2022, and he's 13, and he needs his father. He needs his father. And he's going to be getting into tangles with his peer group. He's going to be dating in a year or a couple of years. And so he's going to need his father around. You have to get back on your feet for him. And so if getting a haircut helps, which I think it will, you get a haircut for the sake of your son. If you say, well, I don't really feel like going back into selling cars, if that's the best way for you to get a job, you do that for the sake of your son. And that is, of course, the big North Star that you have to guide yourself by. And again, I know you know that. I just wanted to remind you. And you will get good things out of the passage of the last few years, which has been brutal. And if it's any consolation, of course, most people got their asses kicked all up and down Hell's Highway over the last couple of years, certainly since 2020 and COVID. It's been brutal. I know a number of people who've lost their businesses, who've lost their income. I know some people who've lost their homes. I know some people who've lost their condos. I know some people who've had to sell their cars. I mean, I've known even one or two people who've been living in their cars. So COVID has kicked everybody's ass all up and down Hell's Highway, and it is a fairly universal phenomenon, and good things can come out of it, at least, not least of which is an appreciation of having a pillow, some quiet, and a lights-free bed. That for the rest of your life, you will sit down, you will lie down in your bed and say, nice and quiet. I don't have to be kicked out at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't have to walk, as you say, for an hour just to get my feet thawed, and there are no lice in the bed with me. And you will be grateful for that for the rest of your life. And that's a huge plus to get out of something like this.
I sure will, and I'll take that advice to heart, and I'll let you know if I follow. I'll follow up with you if I do it or not. But I'm inclined at the moment to get a haircut and uh, get a real job, or at least a job selling cars at a dealership. But I'll let you know how it goes. Thank you so much for taking my call, Steph, and this means a lot to me.
You are very, very welcome. And listen, last thing I'll say, because I've said this to other people, normally it's for therapy, but I'll obviously extend it to you as well, that if you get a job and you need bus fare and a little bit of walkabout money to get yourself set up, just let me know. I can send you some and get you sorted and settled. All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. Keep me posted, and I really appreciate the call today.
Thank you. Likewise.
Take care. Bye bye.